A request that was sent to me many months ago was to feature my all-time favourite comedies. So with a couple of exclusions that I'll explain in a minute, these are my top 10 picks from a lifetime of laughter. I think we could all do with a good laugh after the previous 14 months or so, and we've certainly done that here by revisiting what I consider to be some of the funniest films of all time. However, as mentioned, I decided to exclude a few films. Firstly, I think a couple of the Christmas comedy films would have featured in this rundown, but as I'd already included them in my 2020 Christmas movie recommendations video, I decided not to feature them again. I also decided to exclude the old-time comedies from Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd and Laurel and Hardy, simply because they probably deserve a video on their own. Now I'm going to tag a couple of other people who I would like to actually cover their top 10 comedies of all time, and these are two chaps I've got to know quite well on YouTube. It's John at Mondo Chelovek Movies and Keith at Euphoria Pictures. I think both these chaps have got very good critical reviews on their channels of films, and also a pretty good taste in films. So you have a think, chaps, about which are your top 10 favourite comedies, and let's see what sort of a list you come up with. And I'll put the links in the description below to their channels, and as soon as they put something up, I'll get a message out there in a future video. Now, I don't expect everyone to entirely agree with the choices I've made, but I'm choosing these films because they are the ones over the years that made me laugh the most while watching them. And so that brings us to the number 10 in the list, the first film, and it stars Morgan Freeman, Christopher Walken and William Macy, and is the 2009 film The Heist. This is also known as the Maiden Heist. 3 art gallery security staff conspire to steal their 3 favourite artworks after the museum management announced they have been sold to an art gallery in Denmark. The premise doesn't sound much, but it's a madcap caper that builds and builds and increases in hilarity as the film goes on. The 3 stars are all superb with absolutely perfect comedic timing between them, and that is the glue that holds it all together. You really get behind these characters and want them to pull the heist off successfully, even though there seems to be little chance of them doing so. It's ridiculous, it's zany, and it can be yours on Blu-ray for about £2. The second film, and in 9th place, is the 2001 film Heartbreakers, starring Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt. Max and her daughter Paige are a pair of con artists who seduce rich men to marry them, trick them into infidelity, divorce them and quickly rip them off with a financial settlement. Mother and daughter embark on one last big con where they intend to score in a big way, and therefore settle on tobacco magnate William B. Tenzie, played hilariously by Gene Hackman. They need to work fast though, because Tenzie clearly has a lung condition as a result of a lifetime of chain smoking. Ray Liotta is the jilted husband we see at the start of the film, but he can't let it go, and his crazy persona helps to emphasise the madcap nature of this film. The whole cast strings it along, and it gets funnier the more outrageous it gets. Whilst it's never exactly believable, in the end it also turns into a sort of romantic comedy, with mother and daughter reconciling and both finding true love before going their separate ways. It didn't seem to do too well at the box office, but my wife and I really enjoyed it, and that is why that upon release we purchased the DVD, and we are still getting good laughs out of it almost 20 years later. In 8th place is the 1988 follow-up to the 1982 television series Police Squad, and this is The Naked Gun. Lieutenant Frank Drebin is assigned to protect the Queen of England during a visit to Los Angeles following an assassination threat from Vincent Ludwig. It's from the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams who most famously brought us Airplane, with Leslie Nielsen hamming it up with the same sort of gags that made the 1979 film such a worldwide sensation. It's complete nonsense of course, but it's all served up so well that once you're into it, it never lets up. A crazy film, and one we still watch on our VHS tape, which must be over 30 years old now. The 2 sequels are more of the same, but who can remember CD-I? My recollection of CD-I is that it fueled the growth of LaserDisc here in the UK. Many of us wanted to progress to films on disc rather than unreliable, poor quality tape, but CD-I didn't look much better than VHS. It pointed many of us to LaserDisc, and that turn of events probably led to the disc market that we enjoy today. Coming in at number 7 is the 1986 Tom Hanks and Shelley Long comedy, The Money Pit. Walter Fielding and Anna Crowley have to find somewhere to live after Anna's ex-husband returns from overseas earlier than expected. They end up with $1 million mansion that starts to fall apart immediately they move in. It's another crazy, nonsensical film that just works. One scene in particular that had me in stitches is when Tom Hanks and Shelley Long are manually filling their bath after Hanks has had another disaster in the kitchen that sees all the wiring burn out and just about everything in there explode and generally get destroyed. With blackened face he goes back upstairs, tips a bucket of heated water in the bath, which then proceeds to crash through the ceiling and smash to smithereens on the floor below. The camera looks up through the hole to see Tom Hanks has completely lost it and Shelley Long looking on in disbelief. I don't know how many takes this took to get the end result, but this sequence is left on screen for quite some time and it had me splitting my sides when I first saw it. And number 6 is another Tom Hanks, and this one was being made just as another of his films was hitting it big in the cinemas, and this is the 1989 film The Burbs. Hanks plays Ray Peterson, who has a week off work and he wants to spend it at home relaxing and generally lazing about the house. Unfortunately, it appears the Addams family has moved in next door in the form of the Klopeks, and there are some really odd goings-on such as digging holes, or graves, in the garden in the middle of the night. Unfortunately for Ray, all his other neighbours are all nuts too, and Ray gets caught up in their near-delusional obsessions with regards to what the Klopeks are up to. I first saw this on a television broadcast and loved it. I can only imagine the laughter in a packed cinema, but for me the funniest thing is probably my wife laughing so hard at times that she could barely breathe. The sequence that gets her the most is when the Bruce Dern character falls off the roof. Bruce Dern is terrific throughout though, and that crazy look on his face the whole time must have really taken some effort. It's a film that needs to be watched twice because I hadn't seen it for years, and although it's still hilarious, it seems to lack a clear focus in the middle somehow. It all comes together in the end and should give most a good laugh, though possibly not quite so much as the person who usually sits next to me. Number 5 is probably the film that has made me laugh the hardest I've ever laughed throughout a film. It's another Jim Abrahams and Zucker Brothers dose of hilarity, the 1986 film Ruthless People. This film opens with millionaire Sam Stone, played by Danny DeVito, talking to his girlfriend over dinner about how he is going to kill his wife to get her money, despite having amassed a fortune of his own. He knows how he is going to kill her and wants to watch her suffer as he carries out the deed. Right from the start, this film is nuts. Stone had previously cheated Ken and Sandy Kessley, played by Judge Reinhold and Helen Slater, out of Sandy's design of the spandex miniskirt, and the Kessleys now want to be recompensed. So while Sam is in the restaurant, they kidnap his wife Barbara, played by Bette Midler. This was probably not the best plan though, given that Stone is just coming home to kill her. Thus this hilarious romp is set on its way, and it is impossible to keep up with all the double meanings, the confusion, the twists and the gags. It gets increasingly out of control as the film progresses, culminating with a topper right at the end, as the two policemen walk away from the loving, reunited couple, Danny DeVito and Bette Midler, whilst talking about their own hopes that their own marriages will still be happy and loving after 30 years, whilst behind them, Bette Midler is beating 10 bells out of Danny DeVito before kicking him off the pier and into the sea.
Do it.
Ruthless People was doing the rounds at the same time as Crocodile Dundee. My brother and I, along with his future wife, all went to the Odeon Leicester Square to queue up for Crocodile Dundee. Fortunately, as it turned out, the house was packed and we didn't get in, so we went around the corner to Charing Cross Road where Ruthless People was being screened. We only knew Ruthless People was a comedy, and we were in the mood for a comedy as we were expecting to get in to see Crocodile Dundee. I have never known an audience laugh so much as during Ruthless People, so I don't know what my brother's wife-to-be thought of the pair of us that night, but we were holding our sides with tears streaming down our faces from laughing so hard. It doesn't play quite that successfully at home, but I dare anyone not to laugh out loud during this 90 minutes of mayhem. And following Ruthless People at number 4, it's the ubiquitous Zucker Brothers and Jim Abrams comedy. It's the 1979 classic, Airplane. I don't suppose anyone needs a recap of the plot of this film. It's just so well known that surely everyone knows of the film, even if they haven't seen it or don't care for it. However, Ted Stryker, played by Robert Hayes, has a fear of flying after a botched mission in World War II, but his girlfriend flight attendant Elaine Dickinson, played by Julie Haggerty, has just left him and he follows her to the airport. 2 failed attempts to tempt her back result in him buying a smoking ticket to board her flight. Soon the crew and many of the passengers are poisoned, and it's down to Ted and Otto to save the day. The whole thing is madcap, with so many sight gags, double entendres and twisted situations that it takes several viewings to fully appreciate it. It was an immediate classic, and fortunately for some of us it was released on Super 8 in various lengths all the way up to a full feature, so we could analyse every scene and pick up every single joke and comic sequence hidden in there. Surely one of the funniest comedies of all time.
And don't call me Shirley.
But as the years have gone on, there are a few films that I've preferred and do consider to be even better. And number 3 is another Tom Hanks, the film that made him a major star. It's the 1988 film Big, in which he plays Josh Baskin. At the start, Josh is a 13-year-old boy, played by David Moscow, who wishes on a Zoltar machine at a fun fair. He wishes he was big, and wakes up the following morning as a fully grown man, but still with the same child's personality. Thus begins this crazy plot that had me in stitches the first time I ever saw it. Tom Hanks is completely convincing as a boy in a man's body, and it's a riot from start to finish. Anyone who saw my Batman 4K review recently will know I picked up the 35mm trailer for that film. Well, in the same box was the 35mm trailer for Big, and so that came home with me too, and is in fact on the same reel of 3 trailers as Batman. Another treasure. The third trailer on that reel from the same purchase is actually number 2 in my all-time favourite comedies, and it's the 1997 film Mouse Hunt. Ernie and Lars Smuntz inherit their father's house, which turns out to be extremely valuable, as it's the missing LaRue. Unfortunately for them, a mouse has taken occupancy and likes his solitude. No one or anything can get the better of this clever little mouse, not even getting the meanest cat alive, nor calling in Christopher Walken's exterminator character. This is pure genius, and if Laurel and Hardy was still alive in 1997, this is the film they would have made. In fact, the makers pay homage to the masters in some scenes. Lee Evans and Nathan Lane are perfect in the roles, with great comedic timing, a great script, and an amazing mouse. We saw this film on opening night at the Empire Leicester Square in April 1998, and didn't stop laughing all the way through. That brings us to my favourite comedy of all time. It's the hugely repeatable Groundhog Day from 1993. This is the film that Bill Murray was made for, although I have to say that he's very similar and almost as good in the Christmas comedy Scrooged. This is the tale of the man stuck in time to relive the same day over and over again. Bill Murray plays TV weatherman Phil Connors, and along with his new producer played by Andy McDowell and cameraman Chris Elliott, he is sent to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to cover the annual Groundhog Day festivities. This is hardly his favourite assignment, and when he awakes the next morning he finds it's Groundhog Day all over again. He is stuck in this nightmare for what appears to be about 100 years, and during that time he gets to know every single detail and every single person in the town. He knows everything that happens, and eventually he begins to use this situation to benefit others. In the end, he lives through the perfect day and thus is released from his purgatory. This was reworked for the hilarious Christmas film Pete's Christmas, so it is not just Bill Murray that carries this film off. Annie MacDowell is the perfect muse for Murray's character, and in the end it's the age-old story of boy meets girl and boy gets the girl, but it's all carried off so well. Not only is this film a masterpiece of comedy, but it is actually a very good film, and that is why I place it at number 1 as my favourite comedy of all time. It was remastered into 4K in 2018, and the 4K disc is far superior to the Blu-ray, so well worth reinvesting in. Sound has been reworked into Dolby Atmos. I don't suppose anyone out there entirely agrees with my top 10, but please bear in mind that I haven't seen every film ever made, so there are bound to be changes over time. Also, some other great comedies may appear if I do another Christmas movie recommendations video this December, so please keep watching. And if you did like this video, please give it a like, and also consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to continue creating content like this in the future. Until the next video, bye bye for now.